I absolutely hated running, probably because I sucked at it. Then one day, I decided to do something about this weakness. Or maybe I was just bored during 2020 due to COVID. So I started running. First year starting in 2020 September, 191 kilometers. Second year, 346 kilometers. Third year, 421. Fourth year, 713. And this year so far, 409 kilometers. In total, that makes up 2,082 kilometers in roughly 4 years. I know that's a mileage that some might run in 6 months or a year, but to me, that's a great achievement. Throughout the process, I learned a few lessons that I'd like to share for runners like me who had zero insight about running, or beginners who might find value out of the experience that I share. But before that, let's break down how much and how often I ran. On average, I ran every 2 to 4 days and the mileage varied quite a bit. First 2 months, just 3 to 5K each run. And in November 2020, I only ran once a week on Sundays, but long ones. Then I've become more comfortable with running as I've built my experiences, so I started doing 2 medium distances and 1 long distance in 1 week. For example, like this one, 2 6-kilometer run on the weekdays and 1 10K, the long runs, on weekends. And here and there, I added longer distances like 12 kilometers or even half marathons. And during all this, speed and pace was not necessarily my primary consideration, which I'll explain later. So all this journey has taught me 4 main lessons about running. First, distance outrules speed. When I first started running, I thought becoming faster was my primary goal because it's cool to be faster. But turns out running faster isn't really necessary. I find that speed naturally increases with distance, more so than the other way around. For my body, the logic was simple. If I'm able to run longer in distance, then I learn how to run better, naturally. Because the more you do something, the better you become at it. But when I'm training for speed, I got exhausted fast and therefore ended up not running as much than I needed to. Therefore, I found running slower and ideally longer is the most efficient way of training in the long run, and that it causes less damage to the joints and you get to add more frequency to your running. And that is why I try not to focus on pace and speed anymore, but solely focus on mileage and lowering the intensity of my training. And this segues into my second lesson. Zone 2 and 3 training is the best. There are mainly 5 zones to cardio training based on heart rate and intensity. Zone 1 being very light, 2 light effort, 3 moderate, 4 hard, and finally Zone 5 with maximum effort. Things like heart rate, how well you breathe, how you feel during the running are often great indications of which zone you might be in while you're running. And I find the sweet spot of the time spent on running should be somewhere between zone 2 and 3. Comfortable enough, but also at a challenging pace. I learned that building a strong base first, which is done by mileage, then adding intensity is a smart way of training in the long run. I needed a healthy and strong fundamentals, and I realized this comes from zone 2 and 3 training. Third lesson is that heart rate is often oversimplified. After a few months of running, I realized something interesting about my heart rate, that it's extremely high. Even during slow pace, my heart rate reached 180 very easily, and I thought there was something wrong with my heart. And based on many metrics I found online, 180 heart rate means that I am running at my max effort. But I felt just fine. So although heart rate can be a good indicator of how efficient your run is, it shouldn't be the sole indicator. And I think this because number one, wristwatches aren't 100% accurate. I use Garmin watch for tracking my runs, and I feel like its accuracy diminishes as the time you spend exercising increases. And also, many will have naturally high or low heart rate like myself, and that is just fine as long as you feel fine when you are running. That means heart rate doesn't really tell a full story, So there's no need to be fixated on the number that heart rate provides. And finally, I learned that running has so many benefits than what we think. Running obviously trains our cardiovascular endurance, but I got so much more value out of just cardio endurance out of running. Running, I found, is essential for modern human beings because it offers so many benefits. Number one, exposure to outdoors, fresh air, sunlight. And this is primarily the reason why I personally would never run inside on a treadmill, because I would feel like a lab rat. Number two, running also provides time away from screen and technology. I personally don't like to bring my phone or listen to music during run, and spending 30 minutes to an hour or more being outside just running away from all these gadgets are just essential detox that I feel like is necessary for a lot of hyper-connected modern beings. And finally, running becomes super meditative in that you have to be conscious of your breathing, and also you become observant of your thought, which are all core fundamentals of good meditation practices. So I find running is such a great excuse and a way to declutter our day-to-day repetitive thoughts. To summarize, from my experience as a beginner runner, I came to learn that slow but long runs, not being too caught up on heart rate, offer so many great benefits, not just cardiovascular endurance. Based on what I shared so far, I am curious what your thoughts are, or even perhaps your running journey and your story. Please do feel free to leave a comment on those, because the more we share, the better our community becomes. With that in mind, I just want to say thank you for your time, and I hope you have a great run.